A very warm welcome, gents, to the inaugural Inbay CEO Roundtable. It's very good to see you all. We've got a significant amount of different experiences from across both the MSP sector as well as the telecom sector, with Andrew joining us from Jola. So welcome to you all. We've got some great content to go through around the impact of COVID on all of our various businesses. And I guess from both Andrew and Pete's perspectives in particular, where you're seeing COVID have an impact on some of the businesses that you're working with. So I'm going to kick off with some intros and just ask you all to introduce yourselves and your businesses in about 60 seconds if you can. And I'm going to invite Mike Jenkins from Cybrid to start us off.
Thanks, Tim. So yeah, I'm Mike Jenkins from Cybrid Solutions. We're a Hampshire-based technology business, and alongside being an MSP, we're also a technology provider. We work a lot with manufacturing businesses in particular, and we look after things like production line integration, business intelligence. We do some AI work, and we also we work with our customers really to help leverage all of their technologies, not just IT, but all of their technologies to help deliver their service to their customers. So it's very consultative, great fun, and we get to be quite creative technically.
Good, great, thanks, Mike. Chris, how about you go next?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. I'm Chris Morell from ProDrive IT. We're based in Surrey. We're a pretty standard MSP focused mainly on financial services and professional services. And I suppose we often focus on the strategic side. So we try and understand our customers' business and help them plan through the way that technology can help them achieve the business goals, which is great because we get to learn an awful lot about lots of different types of businesses, which is always interesting.
Good, thanks, Chris. Pete, tell us about your previous life and also what you're up to now.
Thanks, Tim. Yep. So hi, my name is Pete Matheson. Over the last pretty much a decade, I've started and grown my own MSP down here locally in Hampshire. Very recently, so in March this year, I actually sold that MSP and exited. And now I'm kind of just enjoying early retirement slightly and working with quite a few other MSPs. So now I'm actually, and people just approached me after I sold effectively and just said, could you help me do what you did with my business? So that's kind of what I'm up to now. It's really interesting because you get to see a lot of what else is going on in the MSP. I mean, when you're running your own business, you only really obviously see what's going on within your own business. So getting a chance to see what else is going on out there with, working with I think 10 or 15 other MSPs at the moment, it's very eye-opening.
Good. That very, very early retirement, I would say.
Semi-retirement.
Annoyingly early, I would say.
Andrew, welcome.
Thanks for the invite, Tim. Yeah, very early retirement, Pete. I mean, far too young to be retired. We'll get bored very quickly. So I am the CEO of Jola. We are a mobile data IoT platform. We are the UK's first eSIM MVNO for the channel. We sell only through channel. So our customers are MSPs. We have some very large managed service providers and specialists as our partners, and we sell a variety of mobile data solutions all the way from low power IoT all the way up to some pretty big data stuff. So that's
great. Thanks, Andrew. Matt, as CEO of Inbay, it's time we heard from you.
It is. Thank you, Tim. And thank you everybody for joining us. So Matt Tucker, CEO of Inbay of about 18 months now, which has been quite interesting. Obviously my first full financial year started with COVID, which made things somewhat challenging. But at Inbay, like Andrew at Jola, we work directly in the channel. We work with MSPs, provide a number of different services to them. We're well known for providing NOC services, so looking after all the back end network infrastructure, servers, proactively, workstations, patching, etc. We've also moved on to security services and a number of others around that as well, including dedicated technicians.
Great. Thanks, Matt. And finally, so I'm Tim Walker. I'm the Managing Director and co-founder of the Aura Technology Group, which was created in October 2017. We specialize in mid-market commercial organizations and the public sector. We acquired a business called Amicus ITS in Southampton about this time last year. And we've now got a presence around the UK, also in India, and about 50% of our client base in the public sector and about 50% in the commercial space. So just to sort of frame this then, we are very much looking at the impact of COVID. I'm sure that this, that this year's been trying and testing for all of us, but I'm also sure that it's created opportunities and given everyone opportunities to reshape their businesses and refocus. So let's look at what the impact it's had on us, on our customers, but also not lose sight of the fact that I'm sure there have been some positives to come out of it. And I'm going to start by actually turning to you first, Matt, if that's all right, and ask you basically what changes that you've had to make to the Inbay organization as a result of COVID, and thinking about all the sort of departments across marketing, sales, delivery, customer engagement, etc. Tell us about how Inbay has changed in light of the pandemic.
Yeah, good question. There's been a lot of changes, as you can imagine, throughout the last 9 months. I think initially the main one was really all around communication. Obviously, as a business, we were communicating a lot between ourselves, but initially at the start of COVID, there was a lot of panic in the business, and also obviously panic with our partners as well, as they're adapting their businesses to deal with what was happening around them. So for us, that was really ramping up internal communication initially to make sure the staff know exactly what's going on. We also had to adapt our business continuity plan to allow everybody to work remotely throughout different stages of different lockdowns. Our main technical operations centre is in Sri Lanka, so what's happening with the virus and the COVID in Sri Lanka is different to what's happening in UK. So keeping a close eye and monitoring the key areas that we're working, and then also communicating to our partners. Then our partners, though we are still open for business, we have invoked our business continuity plan, business as usual, our service levels didn't drop. So really a lot around the communication piece and regular meeting as well with the leadership team, so they can then also manage the team and manage that external message going out. And then we released some additional services. So we saw the impact that COVID was having to some of the partners we were working with, where they were losing the end businesses because they're in different verticals, maybe hospitality, for example. So we launched a couple of different services to help them still keep the lights on. One of them being business continuity of NOC, which is the minimum level of monitoring to make sure those servers are still up and running. And of course, there's an increase in demand in security as well. So we fast-tracked our plans to bring out our security offering. I think my main advice really was, even though COVID has happened and it's continuing to happen, is as a business, you can't stop moving forward. You can't slow down. You obviously have to look after your staff and your partners, but you still need to go forward with your business plan.
And how have you found the sort of challenge of managing a sort of highly distributed organization where you've got a number of people in the UK and also in the US and Sri Lanka and other locations actually? So what's that sort of told you? Is there anything changed there throughout the pandemic that you're gonna carry on with? Yeah,
so it really did show that as a business, we can fully operate remotely. As I said, we adapted the business continuity plan. Our first plan was around moving our network operations center to another location, had there been an issue with the first location. But of course, you couldn't do that COVID because there was complete and utter lockdowns. Every single staff member had to work remotely. And we found that we've adapted that. We've provided additional equipment to allow them to do so. So it's now something we're quite comfortable with doing. So when we went to the second lockdown in Sri Lanka, it really wasn't an issue at all. Everything was all up and running and in place. So I think as a business, we've learned that we can work remotely. Perhaps if in the future, as we expand, we might look to do something different in that area. So we have different departments working remotely with no impact at all to the business or to their productivity. So it really has shown what can be different.
So actually very positive, in relation to how you've operated as a business. Chris, what's been the sort of the key things going on within ProDrive's business?
Well, much the same as Matt, we had to change how we were communicating, how we were meeting our clients, and doing the business reviews. And that, what I focused on was trying to keep the employee engagement high and the overall mental health of the business. I found it very difficult to understand how people were feeling, whether they were struggling with the workload or whatever, because they weren't, on the other side of the office, and you couldn't easily pick up from them. So we kind of instituted a number of what we call banter sessions, which are just calls every day where you can drop in and chat, or you can not. There's no requirement to do so. More regular company meetings rather than just one a week. At the very beginning of COVID, we had kind of one every day to keep the team updated with what we were doing and what was happening with our clients, because we wanted to make sure that we could pass that information on to all of our client base. We decided that one a day was probably too many, so we've reduced that back down to a couple of weeks now. But it was really around the communication with the team. It's still a challenge, making sure that everybody feels part of a team, and that's kind of rolled into onboarding new engineers. And we've had another challenge with that, not being able to get them all in the same building. But as I said, it was mainly about the focus for me on keeping employees happy and engaged, and feeling like we were supporting them all the way through this very difficult period.
And Andrew, you've had a lot of your team working remotely for some time, haven't you, across a variety of your sort of departments? But what have you seen within the Jola business change this year, and also within the market in general?
Yeah, I suppose we've always been very flexible. It's really to try and make sure we get the right people in the company in the first place. We've kind of relaxed all the boundaries around what time of day they work and where they work, and so it hasn't been as much of a change for us. But we still, I think the points that Chris made and before well made in the sort of mental health side, and we have had some issues with people that prefer to work in the office and have struggled a bit with balancing, a laptop on a kitchen table and kids, and so it hasn't all been positive. But I would say unfashionably, we have done spectacularly well in the last year, and I think that's probably because we have about 800 partners, and we have a very diverse base. So whilst we obviously sectors like retail, construction just stopped, because we work with MSPs that don't generally have infrastructure. The smart ones pivoted very quickly, that if they hadn't been doing IoT or M2M, and of course they had a ready demand anyway. All those people that were going to work from home didn't want to compete with their kids playing Fortnite, so they set them up with 4G routers, and so we had a real boost in the big data stuff. And then as they realized that it's actually quite easy to manage and to provision and support, they started working on IoT, and I was amazed by how quickly we took an IoT, 10,000 site IoT deal within 3 months, and this is a company that hadn't ever sold mobile before. So we've had, every month we have a record month, and sort of against that, I also save £10,000 a month on travel and entertainment. So generally, I hate to say it, we've had a good COVID. Doesn't sound right, but
I think I don't think you need to hate to say it. That sounds incredibly positive. Mike, how have things been impacted at Cybrid, and how have you changed the business?
Yeah, sort of mirroring some of what Andrew just said, actually. We felt some pangs of guilt at having had a really bumpy year. And I think with all situations, there are opportunities, and you don't want to be opportunistic and we're not taking advantage of people. But the business has had some challenges because logistically, we've had to try and keep the team safe and separate them. And there's obviously the risk of if one team member was to become ill, you want to make sure that they're obviously not spreading it across the team. So quite early, we split the company up into teams. Working from home was something we did a lot of anyway, and we always encouraged. For some, as Andrew just said, for some it's easier than others. If you've got a large house and you can set up an office somewhere quiet, out of the way, then it's quite easy. For others, they're trying to share that space, say a kitchen or a bedroom where they don't really have all the facilities. And I think early part of lockdown, when the schools were also closed, was very challenging. And I think people's stress levels were high, and it was very difficult to see that because it wasn't visually in front of you all the time. So supporting staff was a challenge in that respect, but I think we coped quite well. And then, you know, there's the mentoring of our apprentices. We've got 4 apprentices that need constant hands-on training, and you can't do that when they're not there. It was not so easy to do that. So that was a bit of a struggle, but you know, we were busy with work, so there was lots to focus on and a lot to get done.
Pete, you must have had some interesting perspectives, having just exited a business at the beginning of the pandemic. But what's your take?
Much like mirroring everyone else's comments, really, about you know, what actions they've taken within their business. But what I've seen a lot of is certainly MSPs that are trying to get on the front foot, and probably more around the communication side of things. It's very easy to get wrapped up in your own business and trying to make sure that all your staff are working from home and everything. But you need to make sure that you don't forget about your customers, and they're struggling too. The communication piece is really strong there. If you're communicating back to your customers, even just to let them know what you're doing, to let them know that you're still there, that's got a lot of kind of weight behind it still, because the worrisome ones are the ones that go quiet, particularly on the customer front. If the customers go quiet, then you don't really know what's going on. You can't be there to help them. Maybe you can help them out in certain areas that they don't know. So that's certainly, you know, a very big part of it. And going back, I think, to what Andrew was saying about possibly Chris, actually, the mental health and staff wellbeing. There are tools like Office Vibe that you can sign up for. I think there's even a free tier of that. But just to be able to kind of survey your staff and just check in on them and see how they're doing. Not kind of, you know, being on top of them all the time and, you know, asking these kind of nagging questions, but there are some really good tools out there that will ask anonymous questions that they can feed back and let them know, and you can go and get just a good gist and feel of, are your staff happy with, you know, the current situations of home working, or, you know, mental health, or are they still getting the right training they need? It's ultimately, the world still needs to move forward through all that's going on, so it's just good to know that you're still kind of staying on top of things. And I found using tools like that, because you can't be everywhere at once, it's just impossible as a business owner. If you can automate as much and kind of systemize and process a lot of that stuff, then you can then get the red flags of, actually, no, I need to focus my attention on this now, and let's do something there. So yeah, there's plenty of tools out there that can help you through that. But I think certainly communication and the kind of staff well-being should be key focuses.
I think there were businesses that for some time have operated completely remotely, even this sector, but they were probably very much the minority up until this year. And you know, you would have almost thought they were really groundbreaking in what they were doing, and now it's just going to become the norm, isn't it? That the majority, or at least a significant amount of time, is spent working remotely, which is going to have huge ramifications. I was interested in what you were saying, Matt, around you know, managing a remote workforce on a different continent. You know, has got some clear advantages for a business like yours. And we've had a very similar thing in India, is, you know, where a lot of our back office and our NOC is based. It's pretty much operated seamlessly from the time that they started to work remotely, which was from February, actually, on that particular continent. The likelihood is they won't be back in an office until the summer of next year. And you know, there is, you know, probably a question mark over whether it actually needs to happen, you know, and whether people could just come together on a regular basis somewhere to keep that culture piece going, and the teamwork and the communication across the team. It doesn't necessarily mean they all have to be in the office every day with each other. So let's move on to what the focus looks like for 2021. And I'm going to ask Chris, I'm going to come to you first. What are the sort of priorities that you are thinking of for 2021, and do you have any concerns about the impact that this is going to have going into 2021?
Yes. I think we all have a lot of concerns about that, don't we? It's a massive disruptor across the globe, and who knows where it's going to end. I think we've seen a number of clients that have survived the first lockdown quite smoothly that have struggled a bit more in this second one. And I think as we come in and out of lockdown, which kind of seems like it's going to happen, there'll be more and more businesses that can't keep staggering on. And so I think we've got to be very aware of where our clients are, how they're affected, because it is like this continual, it's like a boxing match, isn't it? You just get up and then you get knocked down again. So I think they're my kind of main concerns for the business. I would sort of counter that, and we have already touched it. It feels like a little bit of an elephant in the room, but there are big opportunities for MSPs during this period. You know, you guys have said how you've had good years. We've had a good year as well. You've probably had experienced the same thing we have, where we're getting lots of investors and lots of people looking to buy us more than ever before, because this is a really strong space to be in right now. And I think our main focus is trying to take advantage of those opportunities, not being opportunistic, but make sure that we kind of invest in making us a good business that can survive going forward. So it's kind of balanced between concern for our clients through this period, and also recognizing that we are in a good industry and we can hopefully make the most of that and improve going forward.
Pete, what are you seeing that's in the sort of forefront of MSPs' minds going into 2021?
I think lots of it now, certainly mirroring the comments there, is that there is a lot of element of risk for MSPs coming through to next year. You just don't know which way it's going to go. So I think a lot of the focus is, again, probably around the marketing side of things and making sure you're still driving the new business. You just don't know which customers, if any customers, might struggle next year. So it's worth working to, as you would to be anyway, to acquire new customers. But even more a focus, the wrong thing to do is don't stop doing the marketing. That's what a lot of, that's certainly a big mistake. Just switch off your marketing and focus on your current business. Well, actually, if you do that, then you do run a bigger risk next year. So just putting that focus on still bringing the new customers through. It is a huge unknown. Yeah, the government financial support is wide, but there's obviously a lot of people that aren't being supported as well. So it's just perhaps worth taking kind of stock of who those affected customers might be. You know, the whole kind of sole limited direct companies that don't have any financial support and are in sectors where they can't operate, they can't go in, they can't serve their customers. So it's just being aware, really, I think, of who your customers are, and kind of preemptively knowing and maybe offering the proactive support and reaching out. And it's a prosperous time for IT companies. That perhaps means you might be able to go back and be that bit more kind of lenient with your customers that are struggling and offer them, try and get them through those times. I think there's a lot of good faith in that. If you can really help support those customers, even if it's a financial impact to yourself as a business slightly, and providing you're happy to obviously suck up that risk. But there's a lot of good faith in saying, okay, look, I know you're struggling, let's get you through this time, and then hopefully next year we'll bring you out the other end stronger. For sure.
Mike, from an MSP's perspective, what are your concerns and priorities for 2021?
Obviously, the key focus for us is trying to understand the risks to our clients and what impact they're going to feel. Our manufacturing businesses can't often work from home. Bits of it can, but you can't make cars at home. You can't produce food at home on the scale that those customers do. So when they have to lock down, that's a big impact on them. And the government financial aid that was available this year really helped those clients. Obviously, if that comes as and when that comes to an end, if there's still a need to shut down businesses, then that could really have a different impact than it did during the first lockdown. So that's a concern. We've got customers in the travel industry that are biding their time and hoping to see their business return in 2021. And if it doesn't, that's a risk for them. So, we do what we can to help them. Ultimately, we gained customers, we've not lost any. So we have some slack, as it were. But we don't sit on our laurels, and the biggest concern is the unknown. That's very hard to plan for.
So just looking at the sort of the market in general, as well as your particular businesses, Matt and Andrew. Andrew, what are your kind of concerns, or what concerns are you seeing in the market for next year?
Well, I suppose we have a reasonably unique view in that, although because we're not an MSP, we have MSP customers. We can see who's doing well and who's maybe struggling, and it's really polarized. And I guess the highlight is that those MSPs that have sort of pivoted into recurring revenues are doing okay, and some are doing spectacularly well. The guys that are running off 15% margins on projects are really struggling, because I think capital projects have kind of come to kind of been slowed down because people are unsure. I think going through the 2021, that's going to continue. But those guys that have really survived and thrived because they have higher margin recurring revenues have done pretty well, and they're the guys that are attracting the PE at the moment. So if you read Megabyte, you'll see that there's a lot of dry powder out there looking for a home. And although MSPs and resellers haven't been particularly attractive in the past, they now are, because they're seen as being very resilient, because they have flexibility. They're not having to sweat an asset generally, and they are able to. They usually have a broad range. There are some that focus, just focus on hospitality or just focus on travel, where they are struggling. In terms of their end users, I mean, if you walk down my high street, you'll see cafes and hairdressers all refurbishing, taking the time to liquor paint and whatever, and that's kind of the same. Those guys that at the end, on end user level that know they're going to survive and continue, are taking this downtime to look at their operating costs and look at doing things that they probably couldn't do when they got the throttle full down. So, for example, we've just replaced 8,000 SIMs on buses, ticket machines, which are mainly sat doing nothing, which we probably couldn't do as quickly, certainly, in an environment where they were fully utilized. So I think it is very polarized. And if you can focus on saving money, and recurring higher margin recurring revenues, and I think that 2021 is going to be okay.
Oh, that's really interesting. Thank you. And Matt, what's your take on what you're seeing in the market?
Very similar to Andrew, to tell you the truth. We work with MSPs of different shape and sizes with different service offerings. Some of them more reactive services and not really proactive. Others very proactive with have high recurring revenue. And work across many different countries as well. We have clients across Europe, Australia, America, and obviously in the UK as well. So we're keeping a really close eye on who's struggling, and it could be for different reasons. It could be because COVID has a higher impact in that particular country. It could be because their end users, their customers are in particular verticals that are really struggling right now. And also keep an eye on, as Chris said, on the second wave. So we are very much aware of that. We had a lot of MSP we work with initially panic because they had a lot of customer churn in the early days of COVID, and that's sort of March, April time. But that we did whatever we could to help them with that. Going back to Pete's comment, try and help them out as much as possible. That's exactly what we did at Inbay. And then we're now seeing a little bit of that the second time around, but not as wide as it was before. So not across all the countries, just particular areas. So just again, keeping the communication open. Again, going back to that theme, making sure we're talking to our partners and also talking to them about what's happening in their business. A lot of people are very open to that right now. And we're also finding it easier really to contact people because people are working remotely and they're more likely to and more happier or have more time to jump on a call, on a Zoom call.
Yeah, great. Look, some really good points there. And I think just to sort of wrap that up, I think obviously the effectiveness of one or multiple vaccines is obviously going to dictate whether we're in a very difficult position for 1 quarter or 2 quarters, or hopefully no more than that. I think the real concern that I've got, and that a lot of people, including a lot of the national press, don't really have the opportunity to talk about because they give so much airtime to COVID, is what happens if we don't end up with a deal with the EU. We've exited, but the impact that could have on our various customer bases is potentially catastrophic when you add that to the issue of COVID. I just hope that a deal is done in December so that we don't end up having to sort of add that to the complexity that we've already got. So, Pete, I'm going to turn to you next and sort of ask you, I guess, what you're seeing in the marketplace, and then for the rest of us, do you feel that MSPs have ended up, creating some sort of advantage that's come out of that, or they're doing things very differently, such as change to their routes of market, working with a slightly different vertical market or diversified client base? I know that you've probably got some points to make on this, so let's start with you.
Yes.
Pete, just start that again. I'm going to do the question again, and then we're going to go with your answer because we lost your audio.
Oh, I'm back again. I don't know if my headset's running out of batteries or something. I should probably charge it up.
Might be your headset, but we're going to have to do the question again.
Okay.
And then we'll come to you for a comment. So, Pete, I'm going to start with you on this question. Do you feel that the businesses that you work with and the MSPs in general have seen an advantage coming out of the pandemic, such as different routes to market, different client bases that they're serving, and things like that?
Yeah, I think so. Probably the heaviest point of view, and from what I've seen in particular, my field's very heavily based on the marketing aspect, is video marketing. Obviously, everyone's on Zoom phone calls and Skype and Teams calls and all those kind of things. Everyone's getting used to the whole aspect of being on video and being on camera. So what I'm seeing a lot of now is MSPs are bringing that into their day-to-day business. So when they're sending proposals to clients, they're accompanying that with a video to explain what's going on. Obviously, there's the face-to-face meetings are now being replaced by the video calls instead, but just those that are doing video, I see themselves as being putting themselves far ahead of the ones that aren't, because it's just that extra piece of communication that's missing nowadays. You don't get much FaceTime with customers, so actually the more that you can be that face that your customers are seeing, then the better. Yes, you might not be able to see your customers' faces because they're not doing that themselves, but actually just you being kind of publicly out there, talking about what's going on, talking about the real world situations you're going through, that your customers are going through, it just makes you a lot more relatable to perhaps others out there that aren't doing that. So I think there's a lot of weight behind doing that, and it's very uncomfortable for a lot of people. It's becoming less uncomfortable because people are just having to do it with the whole kind of remote working situation. But I find those that can just suck it up basically and get on with the video marketing, it just helps them so much more. It helps them acquire the new customers we were talking about looking into next year. And actually we need to really ramp up the new customer acquisition, because you just don't know how it's going to affect things. And so if you are going to lose some customers, there's some clients I'm working with that they were very heavily focused on the airlines, and obviously that's really quieting down now. So they've got a big issue to deal with. They're kind of starting to niche more into hosting and those kind of things, and looking at areas they can resell that hosting space and maybe white label their services to other MSPs and do VDI solutions and those kind of things. So there's a lot of opportunity out there, but it's just communicating. It's all, again, it's that communication. It's communicating that to the general public so that they know you're there, willing to help, that you're strong and you're coming out of this in a really strong position.
Great, thanks, Pete. That was great. Great insight there. And Chris, how about you? Are there particular advantages or sort of positive learnings that you've taken out of this?
I think there are. I think the sort of the way that we were set up to be able to work remotely, and that we've been saying to our clients for a long time, pushing the cloud. I think we all were, and there was some resistance still. I think obviously that's gone away, and we've done an awful lot of migrations, of moving people to the cloud. Normally they'd already done email, but there were other parts that we moved up. Sometimes we did them for free for the clients because they were really struggling. That's kind of one of the things where we tried to help them during this period. So I think there's that. I agree with Pete on communication. I mean, that's a huge part. From a kind of an operational side, we've increased the amount of time that we communicate with our clients. We have more regular calls with our IT contacts, whereas before we would see them once a month, and that was kind of deemed to be okay. Now we're calling them. We're calling them weekly. We're having different people calling them just to make sure that we are, I suppose, connecting with them at different levels to make sure that we understand what's going on for them. So I think as it does with most problems, communication is a great way to solve it, and people are more comfortable now having video calls, picking up the phone, and that kind of thing.
I think that's a really good point. And actually, we're going to move on to the sort of final question now and look at the different ways in which everyone's been looking after their customers. But one of the things that's where we're seeing new business opportunities come up in the mid-market that we look at, it's because the end customers feel unloved and they haven't been contacted at all by their IT partner. Or their IT supplier or their MSP, whatever you want to call them. They've just been left to kind of get on with it unless they have proactively gone and asked their supplier to help them. But Mike, I know you've got some interesting things that you've been doing with your customers during the first and I'm sure the second lockdown. So perhaps you could start off on this one. Tell us what you've been doing with your customers during lockdown.
Yeah, sure. So we have a technology strategy we put together for all of our clients anyway. So we sort of revisited those strategies and had a look and sent out a little sort of just a one-page document to each customer to start with and sat and talked them through it. And it was just a look at, the relevance to that strategy and what we might be able to pull forward. A good example, for instance, would be on a manufacturing site where they may have to shut down the line and send staff home. Well, they may have already had in the next 2 years a plan to do some upgrades or some changes that were actually scheduled to fit in with downtime windows. A lot of our manufacturers are 365, 24/7. So we actually said, well, we've got this opportunity to carry out some of these projects for you. So we rejigged a lot of their priorities with them and actually did quite a lot of installation work and upgrades. And actually that then leads on to further conversations of process improvements, and I think everyone was a lot more open to considering different things. They previously they had a very fixed idea of what they wanted, and I think the COVID situation opened up people's minds to sort of new ideas. Some of them were slightly more forced into it, but it was good for us because it was a drum we'd been banging for a while in some cases, and it gave us an opportunity to accelerate that. And another one, if I can, that was particularly tricky for us was with our customers in the financial services industry that were regulated. And in some cases, the remote working arrangements we had to put in place for them were prohibited by the regulators or in some cases by their clients for compliance reasons. So we had to get quite creative in terms of how we could move them to an off-site working situation and maintain compliance. And there was a lot of convincing to do that actually, what we put in place was actually still secure, and maintaining physical security as well in people's homes was quite tricky. So there were some real challenges, and we managed to do it. Every task got completed, but again, that was part of that sort of technical creativity we were able to engage with.
That's good. And Matt, what have you done differently to engage with your customers, and what have you seen MSPs do to make sure that they're on top of their customers?
So really, to engage with them, I guess we've really ramped up our marketing efforts from the viewpoint of helping the MSP rather than helping ourselves. So we've launched a number of additional webinars. Found that a lot of people had more time initially to sit down and watch a webinar, join it, or watch the pre-recording. So we launched one around marketing, going back to Pete's point, making sure that we still focus on the marketing, how to drive business during and after COVID, and how to diversify your business during COVID. And of course, the start of these CEO Roundtables, hopefully people find beneficial listening to, hearing knowledge from our partners we have with us today on how they've changed their business during these times. So really, getting in front of the partner in different ways and seeing what material and information we can provide. We also launched our Inbay partner portal this year, which allows our partners to onboard their end customer with us in a lot quicker. We've changed our development roadmap on there to now have an area where we can add additional marketing material, which MSPs could top and tail and send out to their own customer base to help them during this time as well. So I feel like we're doing quite a bit at the moment. Always open to hear what else we can be doing as well.
Yeah. And Chris, do you think that we are? Do you think we've seen a permanent change to the way in which we meet with our customers?
That's a good question. I think inevitably we've seen sort of permanent changes. I don't know how far back we will go, if you see what I mean. Will everybody move back into offices? Will everybody start having face-to-face? Or will we look at our expenses and realise that we don't have to spend all of this money flying around the world or driving up and down the country and stuff? I think inevitably there'll be a kind of a halfway house or a hybrid, where some people, some industries, I think will go back to it a lot more. I think other industries will stay with I hate the phrase, but the new normal of meeting like this. And it is easier. It does take less time, so we are more efficient, but then you always have to balance that with the lack of contact and body language and that kind of thing. So yeah, difficult to know, I guess.
I think it's interesting, isn't it? There's 6 people on this, and how difficult would this have been to organise if we'd all had to get into the same location? Andrew's in Cambridge, everyone else is, all around the sort of London and the southern area. It would be very difficult and frankly unnecessary, really, for something like this, wouldn't it? I want to just finish off by sort of thinking about the outlook for mergers and acquisitions. And Pete, you've obviously got very, very recently exited your business. And Andrew, I know that this is an area that you keep a very close eye on through your relationship with Megabyte and through all of the MSP partners you've got. But I'd just be interested in your take on the opportunities within the M&A space. Pete, let's start with you.
Yeah, so it was actually interesting. It was DataCon, I think it was last year in Paris, where I sat on there was a panel there running of M&A, and many of the questions kept flying around. And one of them was, just put your hands up if you're interested in buying, and put your hands up if you're interested in selling. And there was literally only a handful of people that put their hands up when they were thinking about selling the business. Maybe that's because they didn't want to put their hand up in public, because obviously you're in a room of your colleagues and peers. But also I just found that really interesting, and that was one of the thoughts I had in my mind when I actually came home and thought, actually, if the time's right to sell, when's a good time? And actually now is a really good time. If you're looking to sell your business, we're in a really good, strong position. So it was a perfect opportunity. I think that's possibly flipped itself on its side now. Obviously, with the pandemic, there are certainly a large sector of IT companies and MSPs perhaps that are going to struggle if they're focusing on the wrong sectors of their business and the customers are just all affected. Then there's certainly going to be an increase, I think, on M&A activity. The smaller kind of firms getting sucked up into the larger firms, possibly. I mean, we've already seen, not really through the pandemic side of things, but Myrus and IT Lab and TaylorMade and Peach, there's been some large acquisitions going on. But I think we're going to now see that filter down through to the smaller MSPs and the ones that have realised, they've had a super stressful year. They weren't really signed up for this kind of thing. So let's exit. It's a shame, because it means I think the valuations will change hugely as well. And it'd be so difficult to value. How can you value a business today when you don't actually know what's going to happen to it in the next 12 months or 18 months time? So it's going to be really interesting to see. I don't have the answer for that. I'm not sure how it's going to affect it. It's just one of those questions that's now worth asking. And maybe the buyers will also be more hesitant because of that, because they just don't know, they won't know how to value a business. You could do the whole EBITDA and multiplier, but actually, what does that mean? Yes, you've had sticky customers for the last 5-10 years. Actually, how many are going to be in business in the next one? It's a very, very difficult time, but it's going to be interesting to see for sure. There's lots of people are coming up to retirement age as well. So there's already going to be, and certainly in the local area around here, there's lots of business owners that are thinking about their exit strategy. And perhaps there's a lot of more youngsters like myself, I guess, maybe that have run the MSP and actually thought, oh, I've had a really tough year. Let's do something else and try and get out. That's the way to look at it, I guess. Is some are kind of looking at that plan. Yes, there are a lot of strong companies out there, and likewise, those strong companies will be the ones thinking, now's a perfect opportunity. We can grow our business through acquisition. We can really scale the business. But then there's all those questions that come up now. Now you're buying a business where all the staff are working remotely. How are you going to then integrate them into your business and get that whole kind of piece, which you would easily have done before by moving offices and actually having the physical FaceTime, which you just don't have nowadays. Yes, you can have calls like this, but it's just not the same. Certainly, as being in person and particularly with M&A, you're buying a business. You kind of want to put your feet in the doors and meet everybody and get to know everyone and how it works. So it's going to really, really kind of throw up a few questions along the process, I think.
I think the other thing is that how many businesses in our sector, but also the customers of businesses in the MSP space, are actually sort of trading genuinely, you know, and are they giving a true business performance at the moment when a lot of them are being propped up by, you know, things like the furlough scheme and other government support measures. And I think the real acid test for a lot of MSPs and the impact that their customers' success has on their businesses won't be felt until probably the back end of 2021, which may completely change again the opportunities for M&A activity. Andrew, you've got a big base of partners and a lot of contacts in the private equity world. What are you seeing around the M&A opportunities?
Well, it's good to know that the new retirement age is sort of 27, and that the Mohican's back. So I may actually go for the Mohican myself.
I'm afraid that 27 was some time ago, Andrew, and I thought it was interesting that you of all people should be talking about hairdressers on your high street.
Well, how rude. I have a slightly different perspective than Pete. So what I think in terms of trade buying up, you know, consolidation, I think that's going to slow. And I'll tell you why, because there are a lot of drawn funds out there in PE. There's a lot of dry powder looking for somewhere to go. And a lot of the targets that were there a year ago are just not there anymore. And if you look at some of the transactions, I probably shouldn't mention the names because I say anything horrible about them. But if you look at recent transactions, there's a calls on lines business that just sold to PE for 11 times EBITDA, which is
just a traditional telecoms business.
Yeah, calls and lines, which is, it just shows you there's a bubble. And so what's happening in PE land is, if that's actually a place, is that PE is outbidding trade every time at the moment. So I think if you are looking, so I think PE is different, of course, because they're not looking to run your business. So you can sell to PE and you can keep selling to PE. You can keep flipping it each time their fund comes up. And so I think you're going to see some more of those. And I think you might also see quite a few minority secondary rounds. So people that are seeing their business valued more highly than they thought, and looking to cash the money out, de-risk, take some money off the table. So rather than taking money in for investment and growth, maybe just really to cash out the money and to carry on, or to sell the entire business and then buy back half of it from the top co in order to carry on. So for sure, there is a lot of PE money out there, a lot of PE money, and surprisingly, a lot more than I had expected there to be in dry powder, as in drawn funds, and that's got to go somewhere. They're not going to give it back. Yeah. So then they're going to need to put that somewhere. So I can see transactions, PE transactions, starting to outstrip consolidation type transactions, and I can see multiples, EBITDA multiples, really starting to move up.
That's great. Listen, that's what it's all about. Lots of different perspectives on a session like this. We're out of time, and that's been really interesting and great to see so many sort of diverse perspectives on a session like this. So, gents, thank you very much indeed for giving up your time this morning for the first Inbay CEO Roundtable. It's been great to see you all, and I'd love to revisit some of the themes that have come out of this, and perhaps in 6 months' time and again in 12 months' time, we can get the group back together and see which of our forecasts have actually come true. So well done, gents. Thank you very much.